learn to live as one. I wanna see the world united, learn to live as one. I wanna see the world united, learn to live as one. I wanna see the world united, learn to live as one. Zala, que ya no estengeli na bato, bakufela bitumba. Zongisa, que ya no na mituna ya bato, bakufela nanzala. Zala, que ya no koki na bato, bakufela bitumba.
Welcome everyone. We so appreciate having you come in. We'll wait one more moment for everyone to join.
We have to bring the world together, learn to live as one.
Thank you for joining us. Please do. We're excited to screen the film. We don't do charity. It's been a passion project for the two executive directors and producers on this project, and has highlighted some of our wonderful Catalyst 2030 members. So we're thrilled to screen it with all of you. Won't be the full film, but you'll be able to get a taste of it, and then we'll have a panel discussion after that as well. In true Catalyst fashion, we'd love for you to put in the chat who you are, your organization, where you're logging in from around the world, and are you excited about this screening and the work that these lovely people have done as social entrepreneurs who are changing the world through their work, and the passion project that we see with these social entrepreneurs who came in and directed this film as well. So please share in the chat who you are, your name, your organization, and if you're looking forward to this. It will be a delightful session, I can promise you of that. We also want to make sure that you get to know everyone that will be joining us. So those keep on putting those in that chat. Housekeeping rules: when we do start the video itself, we are going to do off camera for the first time to see if we can get some make sure there's no bubbles with the video screen itself. But let me introduce you first to the movie itself. We don't do charity and the work that's been going on. If we can go to the three folks that came together to do this work. Alan Braithwaite, who is a wonderful Catalyst 2030 member and has been worked with us on disaster relief projects. He worked a long time as well when we were very first starting with Catalyst. He's the executive producer, and this has been his project that he's been working on for several years. He's also part of the aid files, philanthropist, and he highlights opportunities of people doing aid. He's also worked with a team of e-cargo bikes, which I think is an interesting background there, and to help use e-bikes to reduce the amount of emissions. They also have less than 1% of a wheel energy of less than 1% of an electric van. As you see some of these stories in the film, you'll see the excitement for this important work that he does. David Campbell is the director of the film. He's worked considerably in this field along with his partner in life, Amanda Campbell, who's the producer, and they work considerably a lot of time to put all this together for all of you and doing the filming along the way. So we welcome them as well. Let me go off to share a little bit about the film itself. The whole point of this is to really showcase how the power of aid lands in the hands of the people in the world with the money. And as we say with Catalyst 2030, we want to shift the power to the people on the ground who are doing this important work, who are making the change. And how do we get the money to those organizations instead of the traditional philanthropists, I shouldn't say philanthropy, but traditional aid models where the aid is coming from these large organizations, and they go to another larger organization, to another larger organization, and eventually make its way on the ground to the organizations doing this important work. So we really want to, during this film, shift the power. We do want you to, if you have social media open, feel free while you're watching the film to talk about Shift the Power, to talk about We Don't Do Charity, and add your thoughts. We'd love you to do that as well. So how do we shift the system? How do we make, when the current system is still relevant, still happening? We need to make those changes. We know this across the global South. These social entrepreneurs, civil society organizations, grassroots, NGOs are all facing this difficult part of how aid is being done and how do we get them. The film studies several examples of locally controlled organizations in India, Ghana, Uganda, and Kenya. Due to time, we don't have everyone highlighted in here. But I do want to remind you that our panel of speakers are here right now in the room to watch the film with us, and then we'll have the panel discussion later. If you know Anshu Gupta from Goonj, he's been around for a long time. Olivier Nkunzurwanda, practice that name, and Ayesha Farah from Comic Relief. They will also be participating later on in the film. But I do not want to take any more time because I want us to go ahead and launch the film. The message, I do want to point out the message. Less than 2% of the $450 billion of aid actually reaches the people on the ground who are doing this important work. And you can go to next. Our mission through the film is to highlight an alternative, a way of doing things to help nudge this conversation towards a more equitable solution that brings control, dignity, and sustainability to the local communities who are doing this work. Alan, I want to give you a moment just to say a few words about the film, and then we will go ahead and watch the screening.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Firstly, you're all incredibly welcome, and thank you for your interest. This has been a life's work. It feels like it. We've been thinking about these issues for 5 years. We hope that it stimulates your thinking, perhaps gives you some new perspectives, and we will look forward to listening to your feedback. Enjoy. I think we're about to get the screening. This is the exciting bit.
That is not my screen. I want to point that out.
David, I think you need to reshare your desktop. Let's try again.
Everybody see it now?
Yes,
Got it.
Yes.
Great.
Charity is big business. Across the world, people and governments donate billions to help alleviate poverty, hunger, and deprivation. When we give to charity, it makes us feel good. We like to feel we're making a difference. But what if our charity does more harm than good? Emergency aid during wars and disasters will always be needed. But many question if charity is the right way to help in the long term. A growing movement of non-profits, social entrepreneurs, and civil society organizations are rejecting charity in favor of dignity, sustainability, and locally led development. They are leading the fight to put local communities back in control of their own destinies and say goodbye to the humiliation of handouts. This is their story. Goonj is a non-profit organization serving thousands of rural villages in India from its base in Delhi. Led by Anshu Gupta, Goonj has developed a powerful system to empower vulnerable communities and help them take control of their futures with dignity.
This beautiful concept and idea came up, which is now called Cloth for Work. It's a symbolic name. The whole idea is that the people decide, the people take ownership, the people decide what is that they need to work on. So a cluster of village or a cluster of people or the people of the village decide that they need a road. Someone says, I need to dig a well. Someone says, I need to clean the pond. And that's where these communities are involved, people are involved. And then after a few days of work, they are rewarded in kind. Also, it actually dignifies the entire act of giving. I mean, if you give a shirt or a trouser to someone and say, tomorrow you go to that person and say that this shirt belongs to me, the person has no option but to accept and say that yes, it is yours. And then the same person actually works on the village road and create a road or clean a pond. And you go tomorrow and say that this shirt belongs to me. The person will say that yes, it is yours, it might be yours, but I've earned it. So that language changes, that entire narration changes in this act, and the giving becomes very dignified, and there is a lot of self-respect, there's a lot of dignity.
All human beings want dignified employment. They want a way to earn a living for themselves and their families. Nobody wants handouts. It's not in human nature, in my opinion, to just sit there and wait for a handout from the West or from your government or from wherever. I think there is a satisfaction that human beings get and need in being able to earn their own income and having the dignity that gives it.
So in any case, I mean, the charity does not solve any problem, and the people who have so much of self-respect should not become the victim of charity. That's the most important part. They are already, the victim of poverty, as a lot of people say, but they should not become the victim of charity, because that is something which is overdoing and it should not happen.
The idea that somebody turns up and gives them something because they're poor simply reinforces their status and their self-image and impacts on their dignity. So if you turn up and they feel shame from that, they feel ashamed that somebody is having to do that for them because they are helpless.
And when shame is linked to needs, so if I have no housing, if I can't feed my children, if I have no purpose in my life, if I don't feel good about myself as a human being, then shame is chronic and bound in it with everything else. And then eventually people get to a point where, well, what is the point? Nothing ever changes in my life. No matter how hard I've tried, I get pushed back again, and then they give up.
There are many more organizations across the world who, like Goonj, put dignity, local knowledge, and sustainability first in their development work. In Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda, we discovered social entrepreneurs, for-profit cooperatives, non-profits, and civil society organizations determined to help communities be in control of their own futures rather than rely on outside help. Here in Wale Wale, northern Ghana, food insecurity and hunger are a fact of life for many families during the dry or lean season. Unlike the south of the country, which has 2 rainy seasons, the north only has 1. And if that is disrupted, as is happening on an increasing basis due to climate change, people have nothing to eat. In the past, food aid was sent to the north and handed out to villages. But now instead, local community initiatives like SEAL, the Center for Ecological Agriculture and Livelihoods, work with in-depth local knowledge and expertise to help smallholder farmers by running learning programs to increase crop production and enrich the soil, using methods which don't rely on costly chemical fertilizers.
My name is Isifu Suleimana. I'm the team leader of SEAL, which is a Center for Ecological Agriculture and Livelihood. We are a local NGO, or better still, you can say social enterprises. What we do basically is to help smallholder farmers to improve their agricultural systems, improve ways that they can improve their incomes, and also promote communal harmony. One of our projects is Source Funds. And Source Funds here means supporting local innovations for food and nutritional security. It is simple looking at development within instead of development that is being brought from outside. And what basically we are doing, we believe that as people here, we have simple local innovations that could further be developed and expanded. And by so doing, this has the tendency of lifting so many people out of protracted poverty.
Sosifan has done a whole lot of support in our communities. We are into 4 communities, and in these 4 communities, we have women have been able to come out with innovations. And among these innovations, a woman came out with her innovation, whereby she used cereal with sweet potato, then and legumes to prepare a nutritious food for people. According to her, she was doing it for her family during the lean season. You know, we have scarcity. There's scarcity of food during lean season. So she used to do that as a balanced diet for her people. So when we visited the committee, she introduced it to us, and we said, oh, let's look at it. And I'm telling you, it's doing a wonderful job.
Yura adibono apana kan yi kpobgo yo anti pili sen kan ngra anyala diranya parantama e kum mon sawo ibisi din nane ka jiyam komna no abutake ka rati tamane nen anwa ma e do asuba kenen ka banyu wontan bi ki mon sama de ne paba kanda ma asa innenge yi ku do asuba yi ko ane ka bisuma yun take ka kyan sukuro la ba te para la kanya wontan dibu ka ba di so man ko ara ama ka won kana za anyi janun tu kunyu ka ba te na anya sa anya hama zu kama yene to in yira nya la ahbela nda jara ane inningna in yinna ninyar ko ngohre in sukuru bisi bay bor bukan ne tonda bay bor person ne tonda so anda den data si mananga ka ari yina palana ma ka.
Now she's using it as business. Something that she started as food for her family has now become business for her, and she's earning additional income to support the family.
Essentially has created a social enterprise which is a cooperative, and the cooperative supports a very large number of farmers. It gives them expertise, it provides them with a marketing channel. Obviously the people that run it take some sort of a wage, salary, whatever you want to call it, but their primary focus is the well-being of the community that they work with.
Sidai is a social enterprise helping pastoralists in Kenya to keep their livestock healthy and productive, therefore a reliable source for both food and income. As a for-profit organization, Sidai claims to provide a more sustainable structure than donor funding.
Well, I've come from a background as a chief executive of an NGO, and I've worked for over 40 years in East Africa, and Kenya and Ethiopia as well. And my absolute passion is really supporting livestock keepers to improve their lives through improving the productivity and profitability of their livestock. Livestock are a great asset for farmers in Africa. They're, for many people, particularly pastoralists, obviously, they depend on them wholly for their livelihood. And so if you can improve their production through reducing mortality, for example, through vaccination, simple things, then you can really transform people's lives. And I can see the power of simple improvements in changing the lives of very poor people. Because what you find is that a lot of people who maybe don't have much money, they can't afford to educate their children, may have maybe 20, 30 goats, for example, but they're not getting the best out of those animals, and they're dying. Mortality rates can be very high, 30–40%, and all that is unnecessary, all that wastage. Through simple improvements, then productivity can improve, and people can make money from their livestock and improve their lives on the back of that.
Not far outside Kampala, Uganda, lies a sizable, lush vegetable garden. It's where a young and successful businessman has his base, and where he welcomes children and teenagers to learn about the potential and possibilities of horticulture, agriculture, and growing food for both profit and food security.
By names, I'm Joseph Male. Joseph Male, I'm from the central region here, Uganda, but I'm a passionate grower, and I'm the founder and director of Avail Group Limited, which is an agriculture input supply company. A lot of our work is centered at innovation and empowerment. So when I decided to start agriculture, I realized there were many other young people going through a similar or worse situation that I was going through. But also I realized that there is a very high rate of youth unemployment. So to kind of make a difference, I thought it would be easier through where agriculture supports a lot of livelihoods. And my work has been really centered so much at changing the face of agriculture, especially the young people, but also showing people that it is possible to live really productively through agriculture. Where we start at our farm by demonstrating profitability and sustainability by growing an integrated model that focuses at ensuring continuity in both production but also the entire environment, the ecosystem. And that is what we demonstrate at our farm here. But we do it in a beautiful way that creates beauty, as you can see the green around here, in that when the young person comes here, they are attracted to it. As a person, I believe so much into skills development because of my values. I don't believe in being this skilled myself with the knowledge I have for agriculture, and I keep it to myself. It doesn't make sense at all for me. So the easier way I can support and empower others is by training, sharing the skill I have to them.
In some areas of Nairobi, Kenya, unemployment, robbery, and substance misuse are big issues, especially among young people who have little hope of a bright future. The slum areas on the edge of the capital are troubled places with rampant crime. Local man Ben Gori is determined to do what he can by offering youngsters the chance of an apprenticeship, which could lead to future job opportunities.
I'm Ben Gori. I'm the co-founder actually, the initiator of Jitole. Yes, I run Jitole, whereby I mobilize technicians in the business community who are doing various TVET courses, technical and vocational courses, whereby we link them with the needy youth, vulnerable youths who are interested in learning these skills so that they can earn a living through these skills. So far we have enrolled so many youths, over almost 200 now, youths who are benefiting. Some of them are now employed, some are still on course, and we have also brought on board about 200 volunteer trainers who are helping these youths.
My name is Shadrach Gupta. I have trained here for 1 year, and so far I have learned a lot of things. By the time I came here, I didn't know how to repair the vehicles. Right now, I am a step far than I did. It has helped me to avoid bad companies like robbery, drug abuse, and a lot of things.
So I saw the need to engage these boys to help them get the knowledge. And some of them are coming from very poor background. So we saw the need to help them so that they can help themselves in the future. You know, when you help one person, he can be a pillar to other people.
Also, crime rate is very high, and this is attributed to most of unemployment that is facing the youth. And that is why we are really finding it so much in need to really come in as a community to also help the youth in terms of informal training.
If local organizations and social entrepreneurs are so efficient and sustainable, what could the big international charities be doing differently? Many think global aid organizations can still make an important contribution, but their role needs to be redefined. And some leading voices are even calling for radical change.
This is the reality of what happens. Majority of the resources that is allocated for every dollar USAID gives or every pound the British government gives, majority of the money really stays in the hands of the UN and the NGOs themselves, and very little comes into the hands of the communities.
I think it's a systems failure, and I think what has happened is that we've created an industry. So the aid itself, the whole aid infrastructure is an industry. You have key players in that industry, mostly NGOs, etc., and they've built a certain relationship with local organizations. Those relationships are not necessarily equitable. Those relationships, there's a lot of power dynamics in those relationships because, of course, if I'm bringing resources, I have a certain power to dictate to you how those resources should be spent. So over the years, what has happened is that this system, we've created a leaking basket. So there's been a lot of money that's pumped into this whole aid system, but we're not seeing the results that we want because a lot of the projects that are being done are not conceptualized or by those who are actually going to benefit from it.
When you receive a project as a local organization in Nepal and a crisis has happened, the project has already been approved and designed in another country. The budget has already been designed in another country. And guess what? You're given no visibility of any. You're told a $5 million project hypothetically has been funded by USAID, and you're told implement $200,000 of it. That's all out of the $5 million. The rest is taken for all this infrastructure, staffing costs, cars, offices, all of these things, travel, all of that. Maybe they'll have 3-4 partners, each getting $200,000, but majority of the money, at least 60-70% is used for staff and office expenditure, operational expenses. So what actually gets into the hands of the communities, and then now a local organization gets that $200,000, they're told spend almost no money, even though they're the ones who are directly interacting with the communities, on your staff and office costs. No money. So you basically are subsidizing and working for these international actors for free. So the Grand Bargain came out of the World Humanitarian Summit. So there was 2 years of consultations that were done with civil society from the Global South, with NGOs, UN agencies. Unfortunately, to be honest, very little G77 countries participated in the WHS, meaning Global South governments, the recipient governments. So again, by design, it was completely flawed. It was led by the UN, and during the World Humanitarian Summit is when we started demanding and organizing our Global South movement, and we started demanding justice and equality in the allocation of resources. At that time, only 0.2% of humanitarian funding was going to local organizations. Out of $26 to $28 billion per year, only 0.2%. And the number hasn't increased significantly. I think it's about 1% or something like that right now.
There are efforts being made at the moment. There's talk about localizing aid. And, you know, at the best end, that means ensuring more and more money skips the middleman. And there's a hell of a lot of middlemen in international development. There's the famous, what they call Beltway bandits in Washington, which are large private sector organizations that, yeah, of course, take a huge amount of money in management. And yeah, they're way too big. And actually the NGO sector, so that's actually private sector. The NGO sector has also moved in that direction. So, you know, there is an element where it's self-serving, business model, growth model. And within the UN, that's also the case sometimes. So the question is, how do you get money to southern organizations? And all the major agencies are still housed in the north, and trying to be moving south over the last 20 years. It kind of seems to have stalled a bit. So yeah, this is where leadership in the international development community is necessary to really push the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the millions of dollars every year into the hands of southern organizations.
It's about misaligned incentives, right? So let's say an international organization that is based in the global north, their organizational mandate is to, say, raise their income, get more money, or scale up their programs, or have more projects, or expand their work in more countries. And within these organizations, you've got the CEO, the directors, the managers, who are measured in their performance by how well they achieve these organizational mandates. And so it feeds into this sort of like humanitarian business, humanitarian industry that sort of like just ever expands without really taking into account what the preferences are of local people and communities.
A lot of us who are on this side of the fence, who are part of these global advocacy groups like Shift the Power, the Decolonizing Aid Agenda, the Localization Agenda. I mean, I think localization, I have an issue with the word itself, but I mean, for the lack of a better word, right? More like Southern Leadership Agenda. We have to continue also making our case. We have to continue engaging. We also have that responsibility of saying, these are the alternatives, and this is what's working. And one of the things we need to do is document those alternatives and show that they work. And I think it's through this kind of advocacy that things will start to change.
And then one of the biggest gap is that we often give what we have. We don't give what people need. Right? So I'm not doubting on intentions of people. Right? I mean, whatever we are giving with good intentions. But it's completely different what people need.
We all know examples of pork tins that were brought into Islamic countries and then being upset that you give food but it's not being used, but it's totally inappropriate. It's not good enough to do good. You have to do it in an appropriate way. Just going out there and bringing your stuff, it's well-intended charity, but it's actually clothing all the warehouses of the aid agencies that actually bringing in other goods that actually might be more appropriate. The other thing what's often happening is that we're bringing in a lot of goods, but then we might be destroying local markets.
It's all this top-down approach where I will decide what is the problem and I will decide what is the solution. We never make people a part of the entire issue or the solution that way. That's why we call it top-down approach. Also, somewhere it's a mindset, or maybe it's our arrogance. For us, maybe we want to see a better world. That's why we are going to those people. Who am I to impose my agenda? Who am I to say that this is the problem? Who am I to say that this is the solution? Who am I to say that this is how it can be solved?
This is why it's important that people who are part of their communities, people who are in their communities, are the ones making the decision and calling the shots, because it's not just about expertise, but it's about people's values. It's about what they want their society or their community to be. It's about their own destinies.
We need to have a mindset shift. So on both sides, I think on the global south side, we need to move away from this dependency, excessive dependency. Unfortunately, the system has caused a certain dependency in mentality where we think that if we don't get help from outside, we can't do anything for ourselves, which is wrong. There's so much premium put on money instead of other assets. But we have other assets. Communities have assets. You know, they have resources, they have technical expertise, they have networks. They have their own assets. It may not be money, but they also have their, so how do we recognize that? So that mindset shift on the global south and the global north, also a mindset shift, and to see that this is a partnership and not just a funding relationship. Because right now, if you look at the structure, we call it a partnership, but it's actually a funding relationship. So how do we build mutually respectful partnerships, recognizing the ideas, the local ideas and the local knowledge and the local way of doing things in our part of the world, and also listening more and really understanding what the priorities are for communities.
So I think it's very, very important that as we think about how we build the resilience of communities, that we're actually thinking about how do we decolonize food systems, how do we decolonize the humanitarian sector itself, whether it is decolonizing from international NGOs, decolonizing from the UN system, decolonizing from multinational corporations that then look at the disaster as an opportunity to grow their market share.
We are not doing development as charity anymore. It's now a co-investment relationship. So things have transitioned. We started as charity, which was okay, but you know, right now, in order for us to be mutually on a fair and equitable, mutually respectful kind of paradigm, we look at ourselves as co-investors. So they have an idea of what they want, and we are investing in that idea in solidarity. That is, I think, what that orientation should be, in my view.
Some of the, feel like criticism, some of the real questioning of what is the role of international NGOs, certainly at a time like this, has helped, and I'm talking broadly, the sector, to reevaluate. Are they part of the problem or part of the solution?
I believe there's change will come, change will definitely come ultimately. But I think that we all need to work together more. So the southern kind of collaboration needs to be much more stronger between global south actors in Africa, Asia, in Latin America. We need to connect more and work together to push this agenda.
So I think the time has come that we change the way we are working on issues, because I mean, somewhere, sometime, people who wear good clothes and who study in the best possible colleges and who have good intentions and who also have good resources must sit in peace and think through and somewhere accept that despite the best resources and best intentions, the problems are not solved. The poverty is growing. The relationships are, getting worse. The pollution is increasing, and we do want to solve that problem. And a whole lot of us do want to become a part of the solutions. I think it is not happening because we are not listening to people. Because we are not listening, because we are not understanding that these are people are taking these extreme steps because we are not standing with people, because we are not listening, we are not understanding, we are not understanding the core issues, we are not trying to solve those core issues. We've just taken it for granted. If you listen to people, and as I'm saying that if you make them stakeholders, things will change, and the same resources will be much more useful, because what we need to understand that doing good is a collective responsibility, because at the end of the day, we all want to live in a much better world.
Wow, what a heart-provoking, really intensive conversation that I think we'll have today about how we can share and make an impact here, and think about the role of charity in affecting the lives of people that live around the globe. So I want to introduce us to our panel here today and share a little bit about them and their work that they do. Absolutely delighted to have Anshu Gupta from Goonj, who is highlighted quite often in the video. Anshu is an Ashoka Fellow and a Schwab Fellow, and a Magaswa awardee. He's built the genesis of the parallel trash-based economy by creating a barter between the efforts of rural communities and urban surplus materials, to bringing about these new currencies. They do a lot of work now with disaster relief and have seen opportunities to assist communities to prepare for disaster relief before it happens. And his work revolves around developing the whole social development sector's ecosystem and building a whole new language and lens of which the sector operates. So thank you for joining us, Anshu. Olivier Naku, I'm going to read it here. Nkunzurwanda is part of the Refugee Innovation Center and has been a wonderful gift to Catalyst 2030. He's the founder of the organization in 2017, inspired by the struggles of refugees and youth in accessing whether it's digital resources, envisioning a platform that would help equip these young people with essential skills and information needed to thrive in a digital-centric world. With his initiative, he's impacted 28,000 refugees and counting, and has worked in these host communities. Olivier is also a refugee himself, and has been challenged by what the refugees that he works with has faced in his own life as well. Fun fact with him, when he left his home country and came to Uganda in 2015, he made it his life's mission to make the world a better place for these young people that are facing living a life as a refugee, and getting them out of the refugee camps and giving them opportunities for their lives. And Ayesha Farah from UK Comic Relief. She's the communications and advocacy manager there at Comic Relief in London. She's heavily invested in locally led communities and projects, and her knowledge and expertise will really bring a supportive perspective to some of the challenges that we have with this. And of course, Alan is joining us as well. So I'm going to kick off with some initial thoughts. What's your immediate thoughts and feelings and emotions after watching the We Don't Do Charity? Is there a specific moment or story that stood out to you? And for those of you that are in the room as well, feel free to put in the chat if there was a specific story that stood out to you. We can take the screen off, ladies, and just show the presenters. Alan, you've been doing this for a while. Was there a specific story or moment when you knew this is my life's work? This is what I'm hearing, is I can see this opportunity to change.
Well, the initial inspiration was Anshu and Goonj. And that was truly inspirational. And remember, I've come at this very late in life. I'm 78 years old now. So then we went to Africa and we found wonderful people doing extraordinary things. And then we tracked down the issues of systems change that Charles and others in the film talked about, and we just tried to piece something together that reflected the inspirations that we'd taken. So, you know, Joe Marley, Isifu, Ben Gorry, Kirst Christie, all of those people are doing extraordinary work. And for me, the big thing, remember, my background is management science. So, you know, I was one of the expensive consultants that gets slagged off in the film at one point. But is one of the strategies is the aggregation of marginal gains. And if you're on $2 a day, if you can get to $3 a day, actually your life is transformed. And what we saw with some of the stories, and you need to watch the whole movie, because there are some from India that got cut. Sorry, Anshu. For the shortened version. These lives are transformed, and the moment you transform people's lives economically, and you've given them dignity, and you've given them hope, then their communities are transformed surprisingly quickly, and that's the thing that for me is missing in policy thinking, because as we saw, the Beltway bandits are busy hoovering up the cash. So I've said enough. I'll shut up.
Great, Alan. Any moment that stood out to any of you?
So I'm taking this call from a theater in London, so you will find a lot of characters behind me. I think a very important part which you see just in this clip of film is that there are people who believe in certain things and they speak the same language, which is the larger crowd. And then there are people who do not believe in this way of operating and this language. And if you see across the film, coming from different nations, different background, but their anger, their anguish, and the desperation to change certain things was almost conveyed in the same language. Whether it's a practitioner himself or herself, or a person who is not a hardcore practitioner but a part of this journey, has the same kind of pain and desperation to change the way we are operating. I think this film for sure shows us that, instead of like one single story.
Yeah. I want to pass this on to you, Olivier. Uh-oh, and we just lost him. Gotta love the audio or Wi-Fi issue. So I will move on to another question then. How did the film challenge or affirm your views on international aid or social enterprises in the global South? And I say that to the audience as well. So I asked that question to all of you to put in the chat. So what did it change the way that you felt about international aid? And did it resonate with you, but then did it also make you more angry when you saw some of the challenges here?
I'll go first, I think. I think we've all been knowing there is a massive issue, and it's been the elephant in the room for many. So that it was really powerful to hear from local leaders and people who are really shifting changes back when it wasn't even popular, like the Degan Allies, Charles Kojo Van Dykes, that really deeply resonated with me. I remember joining the sector at the height of the pandemic, and during the time of which the George Floyd moment happened, and that's when people started looking inwards. But this system has, lasted for decades, and so I also remember conversations with Degan Ali, for example, not being popular in terms of showcasing and sharing. I mean, there was censoring of decolonization. It was a dirty word. It was a word that made people uncomfortable. And so I really find this film powerful in terms of really getting to the crux of the issues, and hopefully 4 years, 5 years now down the line since the pandemic, we're at a stage where we're acknowledging the problem, and we are shifting power and really amplifying the voices from local leaders who have been doing this work for decades, and have often been cut out of the conversation at UN level, at multilateral level, and so I really appreciate that the film has really highlighted and amplified those voices.
Beautiful.
Can I add? I think, Ellen, now we need an updated version of this film. because the world is all about pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? In my
Yeah.
opinion. Okay? Because I often try to tell people that anyone who is alive, anyone who has a food in the plate in the night and a place to go in the morning is actually, this is our second birth. How these models have really destroyed a lot of stuff. The COVID response really proved that. So the first wave was all about food. Everyone was worried about food. The second wave was all about ventilators and oxygen. You know, if you see that, and in many parts of the world, including India, ventilators were sent to the hospitals where you do not have even enough medical system or doctors or even oxygen, right? But because this is absolutely top down and some people decide that what is needed instead of listening from the ground. I mean, the fact that as globally as we miserably failed, and that's how we lost so many lives, right? That shows, and a large part of it was aid, and also not only international aid, but also the way we were raising resources, the kind of language we were using to do that. It's a sum total of all that. It's not just about few international organizations who were trying to do this. That is a fundamental problem which needs a complete shift and change in the language and lenses, to, and how do you really listen more to people that way. So this, I would say that we should really, if we can add some visuals of a proven point, proof, a proof of the idea that how this entire thought on the aid really goes wrong when a disaster hit the entire world. Because in our lifetime, this was the only disaster which actually hit the entire world, and it didn't differentiate between a rich or poor or whatever, or the global south or global north, that way. It didn't even differentiate in that. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yeah,
Olivier, I want to no, go ahead, Olivier.
okay, thank you. I think I need to add something just on this. The only challenge that I'm seeing here, I'm living the issues. I've been just also part of this. I'm the survivor of this and so on. So the only issue that is lying here is when people are solving something that is not known, they don't want just to bring people just on board. They share with them. They can also bring number of solutions that they are feeling, because most of cases you find when these people, the community are not brought on the project design table, you will never really understand what's causing them just to be what they want to solve. They might be having problem, but it might be just aligned with the cultural norms. But when you see them, you're looking at someone just putting on barefoot and so on, not putting on clothes and so on. You feel like this is maybe a problem. No, just reach out to them, understand what they are doing, how they feel. Maybe if it is a problem to them, and if it is really a problem, what do they feel they can, what can be done just to them? So another thing is, they need just kind of community ownership of the programs. When we're creating programs, look at out in COVID. COVID has been a lesson to the global community. COVID-19, when it broke into the world, most of our NGOs had to run away. And imagine the community that was depending on the group, the NGOs. It got devastated until it got ruined seriously. Yeah, why? Because these people, they never given them a spirit of ownership of the programs. If they will give them just spirit of ownership, they will train them, they become caregivers, they become directors of the schools, they become real communities sensitizers just in their own communities. But when they don't do it, they will take away their professional community sensitizers. They will take away their specialists or let me say experts, caregivers, and so they will be taken away. But these people, they will remain starving. So we need just to bring also something which we can call community ownership of the projects. When you start it, you start from the beginning. They own it from the beginning, from the design. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to bring that out loud and clear, is this community ownership is so important to this work, and how working in partnership with the communities, with those affected by the issue, to help come up with locally driven solutions is imperative to this long-term success of continuing to do this global aid model. Can you share where that community involvement, an example of how community involvement has really led to much better solutions than what would have been done without the communities involved?
Okay, thank you so much. Let me look at a very recent, okay, what we've been doing actually today. Let me say today, what we've been doing on ground. We've been just partnering with ADRA. ADRA has been this community ownership. And the first thing they did were like, because Refugee Innovation Center has been doing gender role and human rights sensitization in community. Let's see if they really have a content. First of all, with the one who designed the modules, the training guides, us as the community members. So because we know issues that are aligned with gender roles and what is the culture, the Congolese or South Sudanese or other cultures that are already related to this gender role. So now, when we come to the solution, what will be the solution according to the gender roles that these people have, even the history, their history, the country of origins, and so on. So now, the impact that is coming out is that people are very open to us, because when we are talking to them, we talk to their language, we share a lot. They understand what we're talking very fluently, nothing like a very hard thing. You don't need to use too much of language, very technical words. No, just simple words. They understand, they change, they go, they practice. Then it comes to the reality. The change becomes a reality. So now, it's not really something, when it comes to the community, we don't really use a lot of resources, because we are living and we don't need just big offices. We've been just operating with our small office. We don't need very huge vehicles, the V8 vehicles, Land Cruisers, just to enter through different. No. We've been just riding bicycles, if not using motor bicycles, if not using just something very small, with little resources, not a lot of money. So this is actually what we need just to do. That's all. People, then we reach very many people with little resources, with empowered mind. That's all.
So, Debbie, because there is a chat going on about giving the fish or teaching people how to fish, I'll relate that with the community participation and all that. I think even that saying had its life. Now that saying needs to go away. Enough of this that we want to give fish or we want to teach people how to fish, because this also comes with a lot of arrogance and assumptions that people need fish or we know how to teach them fish. We are not understanding that they know how to do it. Okay. who the hell are we to teach them how to fish, right? And it's not like literal fish. We know what sense does it make. I mean, are we really recognizing what community has?
Yeah.
Do we really know whether the community needs this or not? So if you see the entire Goonj work, and in the last, like about a decade itself, out of 25 years, we must have done more than 95,000 projects on water, sanitation, digging well, making road, making bridge. I can tell you, I come from a family of engineers, okay, from one of the biggest institution in India called IIT. None of them knew how to make a bamboo bridge. Not even a single family member of mine who's the biggest engineer, might be the big engineer in this country, in my country, and even outside, didn't know how to dig a well or how to make a bamboo bridge. This was the community who knew it.
Yeah.
This was the community when the machines were not innovated, when the technology does not go anywhere, okay, because like we all live in the world where we have millions of villages, millions of remote communities. Right? Technology will take its own sweet time, and we can't wait for technology to happen. But the fact remains, in my country, almost every single village used to have a well when the machines were not there, when the technology was not there. So there was something working. So do we really even value that wisdom? That is what we miss on when we do not make community a stakeholder, when we do not value them, or we think that we can go and teach them fishing. No, I mean that's a wrong assumption. 100%. That's also coming with a lot of arrogance of people like us that we know everything. I mean, there's a fundamental question here, okay, that and this is something I was talking to the students and some people at LBS yesterday, that if I give money, I am a donor, okay, and if I give time, I am a donor. But when the community gives time, how come they are beneficiaries then? When I put in my skill, I am a giver, I am a donor. But when the community puts their skill, what you saw in the film all across, people doing so much work with their own wisdom, how come they are beneficiaries? So
beautiful.
They are also a stakeholder. They are giving in currencies what they have.
Beautiful. Well said, Anshu. Very well said. And reinforcing that in the work that we're doing is that the communities hold the gifts. The community holds the solutions. We're not the ones with those solutions. We're not the ones that are going to understand what's happening on the ground. Can you share a story, Olivier, of one of the people that's been affected by the work that you've done and how it's positively affected their lives and changed themselves and or the community by being involved with your program?
Sorry, did you ask me something? Because I lost the connection.
Olivier. I ask
no.
Olivier.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not talking about an individual person. I'm just talking about one school. One school in 2023, we discovered that most of refugees in Rwanda refugee settlement, the camp where I stay or where I reside, most of them, they don't value a culture of sending young children in early child development. Then we found that one out of 100 refugees send a child between 2 to 6 years old to school. Yet this age is much more important age in education. If you don't start from this child, education will be much more, okay, it will be just spoiled, let me say. So then we started just, we brought an idea, we started a school. Then we're looking at how can we just maybe make a school. We've been seeing there is very, very big NGOs just building schools, very permanent structures and so on. Then we're like, how are we going to start a school with nothing? I called upon the community members. Then we told them, we shared with them the idea. They were like, no, because the school is going to benefit, our children are going to benefit from the school. So we are going to give you a hand. Every person brought brought just one wooden material, just a wooden material for us just to be able just to build up a wooden school. What we brought as a Refugee Innovation Center, there are nails and iron sheet. So the next day, when the school was complete, the next day we started with 25 mothers who brought young kids. And they were like, when we had a parental session, everyone was like, do you know what? Today, I'm getting time just to go to do work in the garden, and also to sell some few stuffs just in the markets and so on. Now I'm able just to work for the household when my child is also being cared at your school. But the other time, we've been just very busy just with these children, you see? So we did not just engage a lot of money, not really bulky or let me say permanent structures. But the only thing that we did is just bringing the community together. And we start from the little we had. We had already a few caregivers who were trained by the Ministry of Education, and it's just a little training just of 6 months. But the training is very crucial because they had just to give what they have. So because the community didn't have already that component just in the schools, and the school that had the component, it had only one teacher that is taking care of 400 kids, 400. This is the reality. I'm not exaggerating. 400 kids. Imagine how this only one kid maybe can listen, but imagine what about the rest of 200 or 300 kids just in the room? So now, that is one of the solutions. Today, the school is hosting 112 children. That is 112 households or families that are relieved with this burden, and they are also able to attain economical duties of the household. They are just going to the garden, they are doing these normal businesses, and they join their kids just in the evening. So that's the real thing, the only thing that I can say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anshu, do you have a story you want to share, or would you like to go on to the next question?
No, I think one story is important because I was just thinking. So we made a bamboo bridge in 2008. We means the community, fine. We were just the catalyst or nudge. We were just nudging that. 2018, we went back when we were documenting this 100 stories of change. And of course, the bridge, we thought that it has reduced the distance. Maybe the business must have gone up and all that. So we were, we had those hypotheses, or maybe we just wanted to listen to people in that direction. So people told us that how distance is reduced, how it has become very comfortable, all that kind of stuff. And then there was this elderly person who really said that no, this is obvious. If you make a bridge on the river, I mean, of course, the distance will be reduced, the business will happen, people will travel, all that will happen. But then he says that in my lifetime, which is like 50, 60 years, whatever age he was, he said that first thing which the important thing which has happened is that this is the first time when the marriages have started happening on the both side of the river. Yeah. And people have started traveling and attending functions or the festivals of each other, where not having a simple bridge, we were completely cut off. And he was talking about like few decades of his life. So what I'm trying to say that many times we assume some kind of impact, but the impact that way is much deeper if we see it through their lenses.
Yeah.
We don't go with our format to see that, to just tick on those check boxes, but we listen to them and then try to understand what is the actual thing which has happened. Like I can never imagine. I can never even think about it that the biggest impact of making a small bridge on a river is communities getting married to each other.
That's awesome.
Stop there.
That's absolutely beautiful. I do want to ask though about Goonj, because your solution's been around. You've had a lot of successes along the way, and share a little bit with everybody of some of those successes and how you've really been able to shift the system in your communities that you work in to make a positive contribution to the communities.
So, I think one very important part is that we never treated anyone as a donor beneficiary kind of person, fine, or we never went to the community and spoke about that what is that which you don't have. Normally the conversations start with that because we go as problem solver. I mean, that's what in our mind it is always, but we never start our conversation with what is that which we don't have. We largely talk about what we have because you build up on that, right? I mean, so even if, I mean, the very basic concept of calling someone poor is absolutely wrong, because that person might be economically weak, but that person is not poor, right? I mean, poverty has 15 or 100 different levels of poverty. So I think what has happened in our case is that we were very bang on, or I mean, we have been a little bit nasty in our approach. If we don't want this, we don't want this. If it does not align with our values, it does not align with our values. We will go through tough phases. We will be on our toes to raise money or resources or build team, but we will not compromise, because for us, what matters is our value system. For us, what matters is our different language and a different way of doing things. In that is our belief system. Rest everything is just logistics, right? Rest everything, in my opinion, is just logistics around that. Often in the sector, we compromise, right? That is something we didn't do. That worked very well. Plus, making sure that people start valuing material as a resource, skill as a resource, right? Wisdom as a resource. So what is the Goonj model? That you collect material, you don't do charity with that at all, you don't distribute it to people. People take up their development issues, they make bridges, they dig well, they clean pond, and after a few days of work, they receive that material with a lot of dignity, right? With a lot of self-respect. So it's like a new economy with many new currencies. On one side, it is the urban underutilized material, or like cloth, utensil, footwear, door, window, everything. And on the other side, it is the wisdom or the hard work of the grassroots. So everyone is giving, everyone is sharing, everyone is contributing. There is no one who is at the receiving end. So it's a radical approach. People feel we don't now find it radical because it is pretty accepted. It is pretty accepted by the communities, and to be honest, that matters most. Anyone else accept it or not, that's a different story. But the communities are accepting it. For us, that matters most.
Yeah. I want to switch into a conversation about the value of collaborations. And Ayesha, I want to bring you in for this, about how your comic relief brings in other folks in the community and uses collaborations to identify programs you can fund, to help support organizations. Just give us a little bit of insights on how you collaborate with others.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Debbie. I mean, collaborations really is at the heart of what we try and do at Comic Relief. We're a huge funder, and we really are very are moving towards being more power aware. And within that, we often look at collaborations as routes and as solutions to not making decisions on where funding goes. And we do this through a different route. So one of them is our POP fund, for example, that's UK focused and works on narrative change on themes of racial justice and migration. We used community council of advisors who often provided useful insight and strategic decision making, which included long-term planning, intentions, approaches, methods of the program, and selection criteria for future funding calls. One of my favorite routes has also been our funder reference groups, which was using lived experience, and experts by experience that were closer to the areas that we were intending to go out to. And these FRG groups, so these funder reference groups, define the criteria, the design process, led to assessments, and most importantly, had the majority vote when it came to who got, the funding. So it was 5 members in one case and only 1 comic relief staff member. And then in terms, and they kind of supported in terms of decision making, and the genesis of this was just to ensure that we were co-creating and co-delivering a funding call with community experts, and that decision making was in their hands. And I want to be completely transparent to everyone here that, we've had pockets where this has been done from just involving experts by experience at the decision making stage, and at the start, and we've had funding calls where they've been from the start and every step of the way of kind of the funding cycle. And finally, we've also used experts by experience, and in consultation phases, in most of our funding calls involving these experts, with shortlisting applications, consultation designs, as I mentioned, and co-assessing organizations. And this is just to make sure that A, we're power aware, B, that those closest to the issues know and are part of the decision-making process, and we're not deciding where the money goes from our ivory towers in London. But I'm trying to keep it short and succinct for you. But yeah, that to put it short, those are the different ways in which we collaborate to lead to a more accessible and fair funding system.
Great. And I do want to reinforce this on the collaborations piece, is how imperative it is to all of our work. And we'll put in the chat a message about some of the collaborations that are happening with Catalyst 2030 and how you can get involved with Catalyst 2030 collaborations, because honestly, without collaborations, we wouldn't be here. The work wouldn't be happening. I want to shift us on to Ayesha. Well, one last question I have for you, because someone put this in the chat and I thought it was important. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to work in the aid sector, who really wants to make a difference, but to make sure that this work is impactful and not just a charity, not just a donation?
Hello?
Yep. Did you hear me there? What advice would you give to someone in the aid sector to ensure that they're going to be successful in that, and to make sure that their work is that they make an impact as opposed to just giving money?
And is this from a development as a funder in the space?
This is from a young person, I think, who's interested in the aid sector.
Yeah, so I would say to never underestimate the power of collaboration. Where far too many of us are working in silo. It's not a competition, and really kind of embracing that spirit of Ubuntu, and really kind of working with those around you in order to create the change that you want. And to go back to that main question you asked, again, not underestimating the power of collaboration is probably the advice I would give. But I'm sure Anshu and Olivier have far better advice, and much more closer to the ground.
No, I think Ayesha, you articulated it very well. I think the only addition will be that we need to listen. We need to listen, and we need to, when we go to the community, we need to go in the learning mode first, because to be honest, the places we stay, the offices we work, the cities we live in, we are not able to solve the problem there. Large number of problems exist there also. So what right do we get to think that if we go to a community, we can solve all their problems? It does not operate like that. So I think all of us, with a lot of humility, we need to be there as learner. And this is something in our team we always talk about, that when you go from 10 to 6 in a community, you understand the operational part of it, right? But when you remain from 6 to 6, you sleep there, you go to the toilet, you eat food there, you understand the emotional part of it, right? And to work in this particular field on the humanitarian causes, more than the operation, you need to understand the emotional part of it, the ecosystem, the opinion leader, what matters, what does not matter, how people live. So you have to spend a lot of time with the community. For anyone who is who is working in providing any kind of aid, whether it is monetary, non-monetary, advice, anything and everything. You need to spend time, you need to listen to the community.
Ayesha, I do want to point out a comment that was made by Upney in the chat. Once you become a funder, do you inherently end up in the ivory tower? And is that inevitable, or can you come back down?
Oh, that's it's a good question and a sensitive one. I guess it's how often you self-reflect, you know?
Yes.
I think some of us know that we're in the ivory tower, and hence my comment around being power aware. Some of us don't know we're in a ivory tower, and some of us choose to ignore that we're in an ivory tower. And I'm not just talking about my organization, I'm talking about, so
No,
we're all at
yes.
different spectrums. But I think the importance of this work, especially locally led development, is actually really being uncomfortable with the fact that, is this my call to make? It's not just about being in the ivory tower, it's being, why are we making decisions on this part of the world that when the other side of the world are actually doing the work, and the power imbalance that we hope to kind of shift and change. And I think some people are along on the journey, and some people are further behind, but ultimately we're hoping to go in one direction.
Beautiful. Well said. So let's talk about, the elephant in the room, this traditional charity models, and they're not working. But I love this, the movie that's talking about this growing movement of rejecting the traditional charity model of just the handouts in favor of this more equitable solution that brings control, dignity, and sustainability to those local communities. It's just a brilliant part of what this film is about. What are some of the most common obstacles that you've encountered in your work in dealing with these externally designed programs? And, what are some solutions to help overcome some of the way that aid is being done now?
May I come in?
Yep. Okay,
So,
Olivia, go ahead.
yeah, I feel the most important thing is that if you're really sure that the community is in the center of the problem, also let them just be in the center of solution. From the beginning, as you're designing the approach, designing the solution, bring them together. Just you design them together. Then at the end of the day, make sure that whatever you're bringing on ground is going to sustain. It will remain with the community. The community will keep on running it, even when you have gone away. Yeah, so I think this is the only way, just I feel we might change this. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Very well said. Anshu.
So I still have a lot of hopes, fine, because we should not be hopeless about it, because a lot of people are entering in the field with the new lenses, and they are listening more. They are trying to do things in a different way. It's not that things are not changing. I mean, the speed needs to be different, and of course the white and all kind of elephants need to be on the side a little bit, so that these new people can make their own way. For sure. I think that is something which we need to do, the major thing which I want to add here is the role of intermediaries, right? I mean, if you see large number of aid agencies also, they were also intermediaries of some fund, some money was someone else, and they were trying to, really assign, or they were trying to work on it. There's a new entire section in the development sector which is entered, is the intermediary agencies. Unfortunately, they, or rather I would say that they need to spend more time in understanding the causes, instead of taking the side of the people who want to give money. I mean, because now they become the advisor. They guide people where to put, what to put, what to do, what not to put, and that is why they are hired, okay, by the people who have money, the foundations or the family foundations or CSR or whatnot. I think that needs a lot of correction, that these people now are in a much more responsible role, and they need to be much more connected with the ground and with the practitioners, so that they take a right decision. I'm not doubting on intention of anyone. I'm just talking about the process of something which needs to be corrected.
Great. Now, Samantha Powers, I remember she announced this at the Skull World Forum in 2001, I believe. And then you saw this new press release that goes out. Samantha Powers, by the way, runs the USAID in the US. And she said that there's a 25% target for funding local organizations set. But also by the end of the decade, they want 50% of the programming, at least half of every dollar that's spent, will need to place local communities in the lead in either co-design of the project, setting priorities, driving implementation, or evaluating impact of programs. Do you see that happening? Do you see some of these organizations really supporting the local communities and putting it in the hands of them?
Yeah, I think let me start with funding. Funding local community just is the requirement remains the same requirements of the same funding that is heading to, okay, let me say competitors are these NGOs like Oxfam, this UNHCR and so on, which has number of a big profile, and they when it comes back to when they say 25%, are this local community organization really qualified? Because the systems remains, they can just change the programming, but the systems remain a little bit complex. Let me bring just you a number of applications that I sent. You know, applying when you read somewhere and someone starts telling you that you need just to bring like a certain document. Have you been certified? Maybe from the US, you have this certain numbers. This is too much, actually. If they want just to localize funding, let's also simplify the system to the local level. That is the only thing. That is the only way. But now, how can a local organization that feel more proud, maybe also confident of doing the same work, but missing documentations, all those high document, okay, locally registered, but they need just number of, I don't know, number of documentation that really limit them just to apply. Still, it is indirectly limited. But when it is politically, okay, let me say the policies are open, but the systems are closed. That is clear.
I need to add on this. I think it's a good idea. Wonderful, wonderful dream. If it happens, it's wonderful. You know, but the language of this is English. Grassroots organizations work in their own languages, fine, in their own context. If you see this entire locally led kind of stuff, that is number one. Number two, as you know, as Olivier also said, the processes are so complicated. I mean, I think that the entire sector will change when the grant application and the reporting pattern will not remain with the overqualified people, but the people from the average grad schools. I think that's how you'll have the simplification of the processes, and that's how these things will start changing. Otherwise, this dream or this scheme will also become just one of the scheme where you have budgets, you have a lot of resources, but those are not utilized because of the processes and the systems which we have created, you know, and which systems and processes are also the symbol of the power, because we want to retain that power in our hand. It's very simple. Let's be honest about it. So that needs to it doesn't need a marginal change. It needs a radical shift in thinking. I mean, so that is a first step, good step. But even in doing it, needs a radical and a bigger change.
Can I just come in there,
Please.
Debbie? Sorry.
Mhm.
I was just going to say, totally agree with both of you, and I would even go a step further and build on what you just said, Anshu, in that behind the kind of the stats, and I believe that USAID actually brought down the 25% because they had a percentage before that was over ambitious target. At the crux of this issue and what it comes down to is, are they willing to let go of power, and can they? And they can't. So in theory it works, but in practice, will they ever be able to relinquish power and be aware of their power and relinquish it to locally led development? I think the answer sadly is no. I think someone said, and this was my naivety when I came into the sector in the chat box, just give the funding to beneficiaries. I wish it was that simple. When you work with UK government agencies who are constantly saying to you, this is British taxpayer money, we need to know exactly where the money is going to. These are real issues that happen. And then to touch on a question I think that was asked I don't think we got to, it's about the funding applications themselves, which are ridiculous. I mean, I spoke to a local leader who said that his entire organization, this small grassroots organization somewhere rural in Ghana, spent about 2 to 3 weeks working on a 72-page report to be declined. An entire organization, not one person, not a team. And he said, he very vulnerably said to us, I burst into tears. We spent 3 weeks working on this. And so in terms of the recommendations of funding as well, and the system of that, meeting people where they are, our local leaders already are looking at innovative ways and testing innovative ways of having people apply via WhatsApp, because that's much easier than spending 72 hours or more on a 12-page, 72-page paper, asking information that you actually need, not ones that will live somewhere on a shelf that no one will actually look at, providing opportunities to applicants and organizations via webinars, via conversations, to build that relationship, actually, and telling them explicitly what this funding, the eligibility criteria, what you will fund and what you won't fund, because clarity is kindness, to put it in a nutshell. But there are so many issues, and I think in theory, when you hear about it from USAID, and from the UK, in theory it sounds very, very, very dandy and sounds like a great initiative, but I think in practice we fall short. And there are mechanisms starting from the funding cycle and the application cycle that just don't allow for it.
Yes, so such an important part. They actually did a session with donors and talked about how a $300,000 grant, and 10 grants were giving away, but it was costing the social entrepreneurs $3 million worth of time to write the grant proposal and then get denied. So making sure those grants are clear is a very important part of this as well. As we close up here, I want you each to be able to give us your advice to the aspiring social entrepreneurs, the current social entrepreneurs and activists who are doing this important work. What would you say to them to encourage them to contribute to long-term sustainable change in the Global South and the communities they work in particular?
Yeah, so let me maybe go first. Number one is that if the real social entrepreneur understand the bad of the problem of the community, and will never really pull off, keep on just on the chair, just keep driving, keep doing it. Whether me, I know I have just a slogan with my fellow members that we are not going to, if you're not funded, but still we are going to keep working, and the funding will find us on the way. So I believe I've never been given even more than 10,000. The most funding that I received is $10,000 US. That it was even coming from Catalyst 2030. so that is the biggest funding. But you know how much impact it has brought to the community? But still, let me tell you, Secondly, and come up with a spirit of collaboration. Your fellow leader has something that you don't have. You will learn from him, peer-to-peer learning, and maybe the other one just have maybe a certain resources that you need. You will just be able just to make it better in your life. So I believe what we need just to do is secondly, thirdly, maybe is just keep on just applying. Don't lose hope. You never know. The system change will find you on the way. Your application might be the first one to be received or to be granted. Just let me say, to be accepted after the change of the system. So keep applying. You never know. So another thing is that make sure that you learn from other people. Keep learning. Don't stop. Keep learning. Yeah. So that's the only thing. Thank you.
Ayesha, how about you?
I'll try to keep it short and sweet, but do not underestimate the power of partnerships, even at a local level. Too many of us are working in silos, as I mentioned. Collaborate, embrace the spirit of solidarity and Ubuntu. I am because of who we all are. And, you know, Malcolm X's quote that I often remember, a man who stands for nothing falls for anything. Stay true to your mission, and taking money is walking away from something is just as important as taking funding, because you remain true to who you are. Don't underestimate the power of disrupting and challenging the status quo, and continue the hard work. Continue the good fight.
Anshu.
So I would say be a dreamer and a doer, both. And no dream should hamper the dream should not wait for a business plan to materialize. You know, these days, all these institutions are telling you that even if you want to do something, the first thing which you need is a business plan, which is a good plan, you know, but I think it's just about your dream. And to be honest, more than the society, you work for yourself first, right? Because this is your passion. And like in our case, we didn't even know that there is something called voluntary sector 25 years back. We didn't even know that there is something called funding agency, because we are coming from completely different background. And the good part is that today in this world, large number of people, even without doing Master of Social Work and all that, they're entering in this field because they're passionate about it. So I think it's your struggle, it's your journey. Two things we need to be very careful. One is that we have to be on it, and second is that we do not have to compromise with our value system. So we should have the power to say no. If that doesn't, you know, go with our dream or our way of operating, we should have the power to say no. That is something we should never miss. That's a big asset we should have with us.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Alan, we're going to let you have the final words about what's next for the We Don't Do Charity work, and anything you want to share with everyone in closing.
Well, wow. What a fascinating discussion. And thank you to the panel for your insights. It's so interesting that the shape of that discussion was quite different from one that we had the other day. So everybody internalizes the complexity of the situation and the challenge differently, and the perspective will depend on the contributors and the audience. And I think that's good, because our goal in creating this has been not to judge, but to observe and inspire and promote commentary and discussion around things that we obviously think work better. So I think I've taken a whole range of notes. So Debbie took me off the screen because I was frantically writing. I'm not sure I'm going to get any structure on this now, but number of thoughts. Firstly, the best is the enemy of the good. If we can move forward, particularly by listening, then for me, probably the key word today, and it's a word that constantly on my mind is listening and trying to respond. Another key word is collaboration. Ayesha was particularly strong on that, but all of you recognize it. Breaking down silos, and hopefully the movie will help in that process by promoting the sort of discussion that we've got. So those are takeaways. I will go and do a blog for you, Debbie, afterwards, which hopefully you may find useful. So just some thank yous. Thank you, the audience, for signing up. Thank you to David and Amanda for producing this extraordinary piece of work. They can and should be proud of it. Thank you, Debbie, Ahira, Gabby, and the whole Catalyst team, because Catalyst has been central to my going up this curve. Thank you to the panel. And looking ahead, the call to action for me is we want to take this out and promote the discussion, and that's what we're going to try and do. Screenings, discussion panels, getting you to spread the word, so my request to you as an audience and participants and Catalysts generally is look for opportunities to bring us in and promote the sort of discussion that been had today. If you can come up with any commercial sponsorship, that's one of the ways we're trying to continue to fund this effort, because I'm beginning to run out of cash. And setting up those sessions, we will go any mile that's necessary to try and contribute. I think the full movie is available. Debbie, is that in the chat? I missed it. Okay, it's in the chat. So if people want to take in the whole movie, there's a whole bunch of stuff, including a bit about fishing. And I found that particular bit of the discussion really interesting. And we could have probably a 25-minute call on that as well. So there's a wonderful story about fish in Ghana, which again, back to the one word: listen, 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 listen. Don't assume, and empower people, because there are 2 billion people in the world on less than $3.60 a day, which is one of the World Bank thresholds. There's 1 billion on less than $2 a day. And unless I've been so privileged, unless you go and sit on rocks in farmyards and steps in cities and listen, you have no grasp. And even when you've done that, from my perspective, where I've come from, you probably still don't get it. So it's then how do you try and promote that discussion? I hope we've succeeded. Thank you again, Debbie. That's me done.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Olivier and Anshu and Ayesha. A couple housekeeping things. We're going to launch a poll. We'd love to get your feedback on this session. I personally think this is the very best poll session we've ever done at Catalyst. It was absolutely brilliant. I love the panel discussion. Amazing. So feel free to give us your feedback, because we like to showcase to our donors the happiness and measure our success as well. I'm also going to share with you, as you're filling out the poll, is a couple upcoming events. We have a social entrepreneurs and Catalysts that just launched books. And I know that we don't want to hear about their book. We want to hear the stories from the field. So on the next slide, it talks about these stories of social entrepreneurs. If you know Vero Cordova, who is the founder of Dara Institute, if we can go to the next slide, and Mel Young, who started the Homeless World Cup. And there's a story on his new book. And Jack Sim, if you have met him, you know he's going to be great. The Grumpetian of toilets here. He'll be sharing as well. So that information's in the chat, and watch your social media as well. We have impact measurement learning series that's coming up as well with the Skull Foundation team. Alexis is joining us, as well as Dasra, to share some of their impact measurement and Echoing Green. And finally, we have a systems learning series that is finishing up at the end of the year as well, and those sessions are available there as well. And in true Catalyst fashion, I'd love for you to unmute and say your goodbyes to and thank yous to our speakers. Oh, I do want to point out the blog that Alan's going to write. We're going to put it on Catalyst and have a story from this session as well. So you can take down the last screen, show everyone's beautiful faces, and would love to share our goodbyes and well wishes in your native language as you're saying goodbye. So let's take everybody off screen and feel free to unmute and say your goodbyes to everyone.
Görüşürüz.
Bye.
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 Trying to remove us too.
Assalamu alaikum.